And we're live. Okay, great. Let's get straight into this. But before we do, Musharraf, how you doing? You all good? And he's gone. He's frozen. The worst possible start to the stream. No, I'm joking. He's coming. He's coming. But while we're waiting, we're just going to go over basically the massive drama that's been going on with Josh Warrington getting knocked out by Mauricio Lara, like absolute carnage, really. I mean, how like it's crazy, really, really crazy to be honest with you. And it's one of those things that I watched it and it kind of reminded me a little bit of Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz because it's almost like he was looking past him subconsciously because he was looking at the Gary Russell Juniors, the Zhu Cans, those big fights that he can make big money fights. And unfortunately, it has backfired, didn't it? Really, and unfortunately, it's just one of those things. Like he'll be looking at it now, thinking, "Oh no, I didn't overlook him," or actually, it was all right. But in the end, it was just absolute carnage. In the end, Mashar, if you're back, you okay?
I'm not sure what happened. It just started
It's all right.
stuttering, so I just thought go back in and out. But hello.
No
Sorry.
worries. I was just informing everyone that we're just going to talk about the Josh Warrington loss. I think you did mention about Fury and AJ and the whole drama around the weight, which we can touch upon later as well. But before we
Yeah.
do, we'll touch upon Josh Warrington's pretty surprising defeat to Mauricio Lara. I mean, as John T. Wilder would say, in devastating fashion. And yeah, I mean, just absolute carnage, I thought. I mean, he's a 25-1 underdog. No one expected him to do anything. And yeah, it's just. What are your initial thoughts?
My first thought was that his style was completely different. I haven't seen. I wouldn't say I've seen. I'm like a massive Josh Warrington fan or anything, but I've seen maybe 4 or 5 of his fights, and in all of them, he's like a quick starter, and he's always really busy. And in this one, it just I don't know, something seemed off, but it might just be that that's what they wanted to do. And the other thing is that it could be complacency and a bit of ring rust because he hasn't fought in a long time. But yeah, I think like a combination of those 3 things was what went wrong for him.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Before we go into the nitty gritty of it, I'll just go through the card quickly just to let people know what happened on the undercard. So Ibrahim Nadeem beat Johnny Phillips by majority decision. Hopi Price, who's a fighter under David Caldwell, a super featherweight, who's like huge for super featherweight, but he's really young. A gypsy, just like Tyson Fury and Billy Joe, and I think his name is actually Ivan Price,
Yeah,
named after Ivan Drago, which is quite funny. So he beat Daniel Mendoza on points as well. Dalton Smith, the super lightweight or light welterweight, however you want to put it, won by third round TKO against Ishmael Ellis. He looks like a really powerful and really, really good fighter. And Lee Wood, who's now training under Ben Davison under his tutelage, won against Reese Mould actually by ninth round TKO and ended up winning the British featherweight title. So good win for him. And before we touch upon Josh Warrington, there's a pretty controversial fight between Zelfa Barrett and Kiko Martinez. Now, Kiko Martinez being the former world champion, Zelfa, and towards the end of his career now, and Zelfa Barrett, I mean, the up and coming young prospect coming through. He actually took it 118, 111 on 2 cards and 116, 113. Now, I was watching that fight, and there's no way any of those cards reflect what happened. I mean, let's touch upon that first.
yeah, no way. For me, it was you could say a draw or 1 round each way, so 6-6 or 7-5 each way. Even 7-5 for Zelfa Barrett was, I think, a bit of a stretch. I don't think he won, but yeah. And then the fact that two of the judges agreed is quite worrying for me. Even the
Yeah,
first card, I
it's
think that was like one.
ridiculous.
I think it was 116, 112.
Yeah,
So
116, 113. Yeah.
I don't get how he won 8 rounds. I can't see it.
Yeah, it's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I just don't understand how they got to that conclusion, and maybe they're seeing stuff we're not. Maybe they're seeing punches land that we aren't seeing land. But they're showing the replays and the commentators. Adam Smith and Matt Macklin worked for Sky, and Zelfa Barrett's a Sky fighter or Matchroom fighter, and even they're like they thought Kiko Martinez had won. I think
Yeah,
if you look at social media, pretty much everyone's saying Kiko Martinez won or it's a draw, but no one's saying Zelfa Barrett won. But I
yeah,
think there's an argument to maybe give it one no,
yeah,
either one apiece to Barrett or Martinez, and then the draws in there. That's what Eddie Hearn was saying as well. But I mean, it's just this kind of really feeds into an issue that's been happening in British boxing. And I talked to Kane Baker yesterday and asked him about it because he's fighting on the undercard of Povetkin White 2, and he's now at super featherweight, so he's moved down to super featherweight, so it's actually his division as well. And he was saying like it's just he's worried because obviously he's going to be going into his fight as an away fighter against
yeah,
Yusuf Kamari on the undercard because Yusuf Kamari is managed by Dylan White, and he was saying like he was saying that I'm not super worried about it, but he was saying my partner was saying to me, what are you going to have to do to win? And he was saying, you look, these
stop
fighters
him.
coming over from abroad, they're going to stop coming over because they think that we have to knock someone out to get a victory,
Yeah,
basically, and the judges are going to be so biased. And I think Lou DiBella said after, like, he's not going to send any fighters to the UK now. And the issue is that, despite what Eddie Hearn's saying after, like, to be fair, he went on a massive rant, said the cards are ridiculous, etc. But then I think he said in an interview, like with IFL, he said, look, the British board and the judges, they're good. The judging's good, but judging like in general, like the quality is good, but we've had some really bad stinkers, and like of course we need to. He basically didn't seem to want to take blame for it. It's kind of like assigning it to it's the British Board of Control, choose the judges and stuff. And I was like, but it's your show, so like he
yeah,
needs to really take reins of it and take the reins and just say like these judges, we don't want them in our shows, and he needs to look
exactly.
at the past year, and some of the decisions have been absolutely horrendous. Like the Ritson Vasquez, like unbelievable. Like how Ritson got the win there is just like beyond me. And I think the same here. Like same here, it was just absolute joke really in the end. And Zelfa Barrett was like, I think I won, but he did say that he'd give Kiko Martinez, a rematch. I think he definitely
I think
deserves
that's
it.
good.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I mean, what's your view on the judging? Because I mean, it just seems like I don't know whether it's deliberate bias or subconscious bias, but either way, like it needs to stop because like they always say like you can see a fight a couple of different ways, but it's happened too many times to be an anomaly now. So I just feel like, unfortunately, UK judges are getting a bad name, and it's going to stop people from coming over. So it's an issue. How big of an issue do you think it is?
Um, it's obviously something that needs to be addressed, and people come up with different ways or different ways they think it can be fixed. I know a lot of people are saying that judges need to come out and give interviews. I don't think that's the right way to go about it because it will just it's kind of like pouring petrol on the fire type of thing. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. It will just escalate the situation, especially when you look at, for example, one of the worst robberies I've seen was the Triple G. So if they went to
Oh, I think Musharraf's gone. So while we're waiting for him, I think he's referencing the Triple G loss to or draw even to Canelo in that first fight. where I think a lot of people thought he'd actually won that one. He ended up nicking it pretty well. Canelo, I guess you could say he nicked it because it should have been a win for Triple G, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to touch upon it too much, but judging just it needs to be sorted out. The British Border Control needs to sort it out. Eddie Hearn needs to sort it out. And I just think in general, like the judging has been so poor that we've got to a point now where, unfortunately, now some promoters and some fighters don't want to come to the UK, and it's starting to happen. And if we don't acknowledge it and we think it's not an issue, like it's going to be so difficult to get people back. So let's see how it goes. And yeah, I think you were just talking about the Triple G Canelo fight, weren't you? How he was robbed there.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what's going on, but
No
hopefully it'll
worries.
stay now. Yeah, like I was saying, I think some people have the or think that the idea of interviewing judges after a fight or after a decision they've given is the way to go. But I don't think it's the right way to go about it. But yeah, so my example was Triple G against Canelo. If you were to interview Adelaide Bird there, it's like that situation's already escalated, and interviewing someone for their decision right after they've made it, I think it would just make it worse. Um, and I think one of the better ideas I heard, but I don't know how realistic it would be, is to have like a league for referees. But I just don't see it happening. I think it will just come down to people who hold the shows just picking the better refs.
Do you mean like in the Premier League, for example, for football, where they have like they're classed as like A,
Yeah,
B, C, D, or whatever, like and then
yeah,
if you're the top level, then you Premier League, your Premier League referee. If you're not, then your Championship. Like, yeah, I mean, they
exactly.
should have
And
that.
but
That's not too hard to implement.
but it wouldn't. But it would be like, I think it would need to be like very active. So for example, after, I don't know, maybe every month they'd review it, and then the positions of um, judges in this league would be adjusted. So, if there was like a massive fight coming up, you wouldn't end up with like a judge who's made, you know, a lot of bad decisions. You'd get someone who's relatively consistent in the way they score, and there is an uproar about what they make. Because that's the thing, like at the end of the day, you just want someone who's impartial. It doesn't need to be a big name.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. It doesn't necessarily need to be a big name, does it? It needs to be someone. It's difficult because I wouldn't say with a track record that of like solid and fair decisions, but everyone has to start somewhere, I guess. But that's where, as you said, maybe you
Exactly,
need people who are starting out. They start at a small hall and then they work their way up after earning their
exactly.
trade, if that makes sense.
And that's
So yeah,
another
I
thing.
agree.
I think more. It's nothing against existing or the current judges. But I think you need like a new batch of I keep saying refs, but new batch of judges in as well. Um, whether it's like fighters or trainers, whoever it is, I think you need you need more talent in the pool, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. It's definitely an issue, so hopefully they get it sorted. Um, how did you think Zelfa Barrett fought? Because I think he looked a bit gun shy for the first probably 7, 8 rounds, and then really from like rounds
Yeah,
9 onwards, he looked good. But I mean, it just seemed a little too little, too late, even.
too little, too late. Yeah, I guess he had to be wary, but I think he didn't press early enough, because I think like the last 4 rounds, I think he won quite comfortably. It's just a matter of, he could have nicked like a few rounds earlier in the fight, and there wouldn't have been any of this controversy. But I think if they were to rematch, I think he'd win, because I think it's like a feeling out process. So in that fight, he'd know what he can and can't do. But at the same time, you could say that um, Martinez is the same. They'd approach it differently. But yeah, like everyone says, it was a good learning fight for him.
Yeah, I think for Zelfa Barrett, it's a case of I think I agree with you when you say he'd win the rematch because I feel like he was too respectful of Kiko Martinez for the first half or so of the fight, and then eventually when he was boxing like on the front foot and like really sticking to what he's good at, he looked really really good. And Kane Baker actually he sparred with Zelfa Barrett before the fight, and he said like the last 4 rounds that's the real Zelfa Barrett. Like that's what I saw in sparring all the time. So he said I'm not sure why he didn't do that more throughout the fight. So he just said like that was disappointing to see, but he said like he's a massive talent. So I'm sure if they did a rematch, he'd win. So yeah, he's a big talent, and I just think he's got to be careful. Like he's really got to put his foot on the gas a lot earlier. And I understand like the first couple of rounds can be a feel out round, but you can't have 8 feel out rounds. I think, and I felt like maybe he was a bit too cautious. Um,
Yeah,
let's go on to Josh Warrington then, the big one, the big dog of the show. You know, number one featherweight, ranked anyway, but I think on the Ring magazine. And I mean, the dude is. I mean, the wins he's had in the past against Carl Frampton, Lee Selby, to name a few. I think he's just rightly so. He had that tag, and he's been very active until recently. Obviously, beat Kid Galahad as well in a bit of a stinker. But since then, Sofiane Takouch in 2019, and then he hadn't fought the whole of 2020, right? So
yeah,
it's been over a year, and then he came in against Mauricio Lara, who's a 25-1 underdog, 22 years old. You know, I mean, Mauricio Lara's. I mean, he's lost before. He's got 21-2 record. So it's not like he's unbeatable or he's this wrecking ball machine that came. Yeah, I think people were saying that around the circuit there were talks that this guy was a beast of a puncher, and I think some of his losses were when he was quite a bit younger as well. So he's obviously improved since then. But yeah, the guy just, I mean, he systematically broke down Josh Warrington, didn't he? Really, and Josh Warrington just
yeah,
looked. I think he got caught in the first round and he just couldn't recover. And I think without that Leeds crowd, I think that did play a part. I do feel like he definitely feeds off the crowd. And without them there, I don't think he's half the fighter, but I think it's a combination of there's no crowd. The fight that he wanted is not this one. It reminded me of AJ versus Ruiz, where like AJ is already looking towards like Wilder, and with Warrington, I feel like he was already looking towards Gary Russell Jr., Zhu Can, those big fights, and then next thing you know, he's flat on his back.
staring at the ceiling.
Yeah, yeah, literally. I mean, and that's boxing. Like, it's absolutely brutal. It's not like the tennis or cricket. Like, you might lose a match, and it's like, oh, you're upset about it. But like here, if you lose, you're flat on your back, right? And it's just like you're going to hospital. So it's absolutely crazy. But yeah, I mean, the performance that he put on. Did you just think, was it a case of some people have been saying that the style's all wrong for him? Did you think that, or did you just think he really underperformed?
Um, I think he underestimated Lara that massively. Um, I think he expected it to be like a bit of a walkover, and when he realized that it wasn't, I think he started to panic, and yeah, he just couldn't get his fight going, and yeah, it just ended badly.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, definitely underestimated him. And how were you impressed with Mauricio Lara? Do you think this is a guy
Lara,
who can potentially go on?
Lara is like a zombie. Lara is like a zombie. I was saying this during the fight. He like COD reference. He's literally like a zombie. Like you keep hitting him, he will just keep coming forward. And I don't know whether that's because Warrington doesn't punch hard enough or just his chin is unbelievable. But yeah, he was that was unbelievable for him.
Yeah, I mean, the guy he just comes forward. It's a typical like, but done very very well Mexican style, isn't it? Like it
Yeah,
really was. Like it was just come forward, hands up, throwing shots, and it's great to watch for sure. I was really, really impressed with him actually, and I think Josh Warrington, he doesn't really have the type of pop that someone like Lara does. And so then when he
Yeah.
was hurt, to try and keep him off was like a nightmare. And I mean, Lara just seemed to have Warrington's supposed to have basically an iron chin, and Lara just made it look like it was glass.
Just
And
destroyed him. I don't think. Well, he didn't recover at all from that fourth round. I have no idea how that fight carried on from the fourth round
yeah,
because
so
he
do
was
you think he
finished.
should have been stopped?
I think he should have been stopped, but it was, I think, his rep and a bit of sentiment kind of played into it, and they let him carry on. And fair enough, he didn't look horrible in. I think he got knocked down in 4, right? And then I think he fought okay in 5, and then obviously further down in the fight, he just started getting caught again, and it was game over.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the dude is like, I don't know. It's just it comes across to me like Josh Warrington, went in there and as you said, he was basically out on his feet in that fourth round, and I'm surprised that
Yeah,
didn't get stopped, like you said. And I think the
he was
commentators were
more than
saying,
out on his feet. He was
yeah,
probably concussed. His legs were gone. He was like staggering all over the place. Yeah, he's lucky. If it was like pretty much everyone said it, if it was the other way, that was a stoppage.
yeah, 100%. I think everyone was saying that, and who was it? I think Kane Baker said it yesterday as well. He said if it was the other way around, like he would have been stopped.
Yeah,
Like if it was Lara, but I guess because Josh Warrington, even though he relinquished the IBF belt, you know, he's still seen as a champion because he's the number one fighter in the division. So I guess he's got that champion status, and they give him the benefit of the doubt. So I guess that's why. But yeah, they gave him every opportunity, didn't they? And then the finish was just like, I mean, it was just brutal. Yeah, I don't know. I don't
he
know. It wasn't great to watch. Just because, as you said,
again for
from the
that.
fourth round onwards.
Again for that, like I think he even because there was 5, 6 heavy-handed punches. I think he could have been stopped quicker there too. But it's done now, and you just have to hope that he recovers and can fight again.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I think he's got a broken jaw and a shoulder injury, etc. I think he was complaining about a shoulder injury after like the second round or something, but by that time he'd already been
Yeah,
buzzed. So, um, yeah, I mean it's just crazy, absolutely crazy. Do you think he was right to relinquish his IBF title now, given what's just happened?
I mean, in hindsight, obviously not. But even at the time, I just thought I don't think it was the right thing because he keep like his whole ideology is that he wants the big fights, and I don't think it's a contest between Frankie Galahad to defend your belt versus Mauricio Lara. Now, obviously, Lara is a massive fight, but that's only because of what's happened. Um, so yeah, like as a champion, I think you should want to defend your belts unless you're picking between belts. But if you only have one, I, I think the whole idea is to defend it and collect more.
Yeah, I thought it was strange because the whole point of joining Matchroom was to start unifying the division and becoming undisputed. And that's kind of
Yeah,
what he was talking about. Like he wanted the big fights, but obviously now it just seemed like he didn't really want to fight Kid Galahad. Like after this Lara fight, so he relinquished it. But then I just kind of think, how much of a pull does he really have? Like, and especially without a crowd, it's going to be really tough to make the Gary Russell Jr. fight, for example. Like Gary Russell Jr. won't want it because he'll just be like, there's not enough money in it. Um, and also, like, what
and
does he
he
bring to
and
the
he and
table?
he fights once a year anyway. So
Yeah, and what does Warrington bring to the table? He's got no belt now, so yeah, of course it's the claim of being the number one, but you can't even say that now. So yeah, what next for him then? Do you think he should take the rematch? Do you think he should just move on with a couple of gimme fights and then just basically try, I don't know, and get that big fight?
he's yeah, he's in a difficult position. Um, I don't, personally, I don't think he'll take the rematch um, because yeah, he like within himself, he might know that he can't beat Lara, so end up, he might not end up taking the rematch, even if there is like a clause in there or something. But I'm not sure what he does next. Um, yeah, he might need to fight his way back into a title fight. So like 1 or 2 fights to get back to a title shot.
Yeah, it's interesting because that big fight now in the US, like it's unless like he was to have, I think maybe if he wins the rematch, then potentially, he's kind of back on track. It's the kind of the AJ Hall thing, and fine. If he doesn't take the rematch, then he's going to need, I think, at least 2 fights, and then one will be like a tune-up, like a gimme. And the second one will be like it will have to be a proper fight. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens because I don't know. It was all set for him, wasn't it? Really, to get
Yeah.
a big fight. I think it was probably going to be as you can, but either way, he would have eventually, got some more belts potentially, and then who knows what would happen. Maybe eventually, if he had 2 belts, he could have then challenged Gary Russell Jr. and he would have accepted it. Now he's got nothing and he's got a loss, so it's like it's difficult. And in boxing, we know how much a loss can affect you, like short term, especially. Crazy, absolutely crazy stuff. Do you think Lara can become a world champion?
I don't see why not. He's really young. I think he's got a lot of work to do on like his technique, but he's got good like fundamentals. So I don't see why
Yeah,
not.
yeah, I
He'll
agree.
definitely be up there. He'll definitely be up there in the division. Whether or not he becomes a world champ comes down to him really. What I wanted to add
100%.
was for Warrington losing. I think in a way it could be good because up till now, like for me anyway, I got the feeling that he's like really worried about losing. Like protecting your own and how a lot of guys do that. Now that he's lost, it might he has nothing to lose now, so it could work in his favor.
Yeah, I think Eddie Eddie's not going to be happy, is he? Because obviously he took on Josh Warrington and really, I wouldn't say he cast Kid Galahad aside, but like obviously Josh Warrington's the number 1 in the division, so he
He
started
pretty much
saying,
did. Let's be honest, he pretty much did.
yeah, I guess a little bit, but I think Kid Galahad said like I kind of understand why it's business, so like it is what it is, but
Yeah,
um, yeah, I agree with you, and now obviously Kid Galahad's going to have the IBF title fight against Jazza Dickens, which I think is going to be a really good fight. We'll see what happens with that one. I think that's going to be a tight one. But now,
rematch would be good.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I heard that Kid Galahad was potentially going to go to PBC. But I don't know
Oh, I
if
think you
I
told
don't
me this
think.
last time.
Yeah, I don't think it's been finalized though. But he basically confirmed that he was in talks with them, and but I don't know whether it's been finalized. I haven't seen anything about it, but I think it's in the process of getting done. And then imagine, right? Because if he wins the IBF title and he's a PBC, then he'll probably get the Gary Russell Jr. fight,
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
he'll. But the one thing I'd say about Kid Galahad is, obviously there was all that banter beforehand, and he was taking the mick out of Josh Warrington. But as soon as he lost, he said like,
Get well soon.
obviously it's not nice to see someone lose like that. Get well soon, blah blah, and like he said all the media asked me to say things like basically he hasn't said anything negative, and fair play to him because that's the best thing to do. Like it's not. I don't think any boxer likes seeing another boxer get knocked out like that. Um,
There are a
and
few
despite
crazy
like
guys. There are a few
yeah
crazy guys, but
yeah, but no, but as in what I mean is if you're not fighting that person, right? Like if you see another fight like that,
yeah,
and I probably because they can relate and they know, like it's just crazy when it happens, and he just kind of it's good. I'm glad that like it's kind of been put to one side. He said, look, he's on one path, I'm on another path, and if we do ever meet, then of course, like we can talk then. But at the moment, like I just wish him well, blah blah. So I was like, that was a really good thing to say, and I'm happy with how he's addressed that. But yeah, 100%. Like I wonder if Eddie's now going to be begging Kid Galahad to be like, no, stay with me because like he knows that he's going to get the world title fight. So it'll be interesting to see how that all pans out as well because
his stock definitely went up.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Kid
Who
Galahad's stock has definitely gone up.
who's Jazza Dickens signed to?
MTK Global.
All right, okay, fine. Is he promoted by Frank Warren?
No, I don't think he's promoted by MTK. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not. He'll fight. He's fought on. So he fought in the world. Sorry, in the MTK Golden Contract.
Golden contact. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's not like signed to BT or Sky. He can go on it. He can go anywhere basically.
Yeah.
And that's actually going to be on MTK. So I think it's going to be potentially we're going to see that fight on YouTube for free on IFL TV,
Nice.
which will be bloody good actually. I'll look forward to that. But yeah, anyway, I guess that's that. Is there anything you want to touch on Josh Warrington before we briefly discuss the AJ Fury thing?
No, just hope he comes back and want to see him fighting again because there are still big fights for him. Just
Yeah, 100%.
yeah.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Okay, yeah, let's kind of wrap up with the kind of Fury thing, which so funny, right? Like this fight is so big. The fact that people are going mad about him taking his top off and going for a swim and then commenting on it, it just makes me laugh. It just shows the like how huge this fight is going to be even. But anyway, so he's in. What was it? Morecambe he lives, doesn't he? And he takes it
Yeah.
Morecambe Beach. He takes off his top and probably doesn't look as body. I don't think he's ever looked particularly body beautiful. Let's be honest. Anyway, and he's admitted
No,
it himself.
I think
But
he
he took it
prides
off and
himself on it.
yeah, a little bit. I think he just says, "Look, it's about fighting. It's not about looking a certain way." I think I've said this before in different video, but sometimes someone's optimum shape and like weight is not what is aesthetically the best to look at, but it's
Exactly.
the weight and like the look that they perform at the best, if that makes sense. And I think Fury kind of fits into that category a little bit because I just don't think he's built to be this ripped guy, right? And not to say that he hasn't been in good shape. Like he was in good shape, Fury, for to be honest, both Wilder fights. I thought he was in pretty good shape, especially the second one. Like he was a bit heavier, but he looked pretty solid. Like he looked, he didn't look like he wasn't flabby at all. But anyway, so he's taken his top off and he looks, let's say, not as body beautiful as he normally looks, even. And people have just gone crazy. Like I've seen so many comments on it. People going like, "Oh, what's going on?" Like he's obviously COVID's got to him. Like he's been eating too much, and he obviously hasn't been training and all this, and a lot. And there's also some people going, "Look, to be honest with you, it doesn't matter. Like it's not about looking like that." And I'm sure like he'll train a little bit, and he doesn't look too heavy. I've heard so Boxing Talk with Ade, which is a channel that I watch as well. He was saying that look, he's probably around 20 and a half stone, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe 20. So I think he last fought at 19, didn't he? So like he'd need to lose a stone before the fight, which is not much. But I mean, he's always had those kind of love handles and stuff, so that's not the issue. I think it's just his belly was a little bit more than maybe they expected. But I don't see a massive issue with it. But I know you said there's a bit of a debate around you and some of your mates. So what's your thoughts on it?
For me, it's just I don't think it's an issue. It's just a bad sign that because I mean like during lockdown, like it seems as though he'd been training and stuff, but people can let themselves go. Um, uh, yeah, hopefully he just takes off whatever he needs to and is in good shape for the fight because that's all we want to see.
Yeah, he was doing like daily Instagram workout videos, but he seems to have stopped
Exactly.
those. But then Sugar Hill, I think Sugar Hill was with him in
Yeah,
Morecambe.
they were together at some point because I remember there was that video where it was around the time where he was hitting the bag and it came off the ceiling. Do you remember that one? I think it was on
Yeah,
his or Sugar Hill's Instagram around that time. But yeah, his Instagram's weird now because he just posts stuff and then deletes it straight away.
yeah. Who does Sugar Hill?
No, Fury.
Ah, okay,
If you go on his
interesting.
Instagram, there's like two or three things now. It's really weird.
Ah,
But
okay,
I
interesting.
guess that's how he does his thing online.
Yeah, yeah. So I know he was with Sugar Hill. I think Sugar Hill's back in the US. Could be wrong. So I don't know how much training Fury's doing. Maybe he's just. I mean, they're saying around June, so he's probably going to take like Feb off, and then from March onwards, I'd assume. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I don't think there's too much to worry about. I think that's more just a little bit of people just making something into a
Drama.
big issue when it isn't. Yeah, drama, exactly. Yeah. Is there anything you want to touch on before we wrap up?
No, just hopefully we see that fight June, July, whenever they're saying it is.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Yeah, 100% we see it. Thanks very much, Musharraf. Guys, if you haven't already, please make sure you like and comment on this video. And of course, subscribe. Thank you very much. And I'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much.